Commissioner Tedesco,
Present.
Commissioner Volpe,
Here.
Commissioner Clock,
Here.
Commissioner Wulowski, alternate Commissioner Carey,
Here.
alternate Commissioner Coviello, alternate Commissioner Coles,
Here.
alternate Commissioner Ma,
Here.
Commissioner Santego,
Here.
Vice Chair Salko,
Here.
Chair Hammersley.
Hammersley's here. I did hear from Steve Wulowski and Joe Coviello. They will not be here tonight. In Steve's place, we'll seat Tessa Ma for the first time. So
Hey.
look out. We got big
pressure.
things planned here. So
Down.
with that, I determine we do have a quorum. If we could all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
Pledge my allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'll remain standing for a moment of silent reflection, please. Thank you very much. Looking for a motion to approve the minutes from our last meeting on January 18th, 2022.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Got Clock with a second?
Yep.
All right. We have a second. Any discussion? See none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 7 on the agenda, Commissioner discussion. Is there anything that commissioners would like to talk about? Going once, going twice. Everyone enjoy the training that we had last week?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was helpful?
Mr. Chairman, we've gotten some comments, just, people talking to me about the food trucks. We've noticed there have been a number of them on the ZBA. And I'm just wondering, I know we had a subcommittee. I'm just, maybe Christina, I think she's the lead person on that. I don't know if anything's been done. Maybe you could give us a quick update.
Yes, I'd be happy to. So I was in touch before Christmas with the leader of the Chamber of Commerce. I'm looking to get some local businesses, I had mentioned. It's been a little slow as we had the uptick. It's been a little bit of pressure on our local restaurants. But I am happy to announce that mid-month, we're shooting for the week of Valentine's Day to have our first meeting. I'm just waiting on 2 people to get back to me, and then I will coordinate with everyone else to get them going. So we're moving. I'm hoping by springtime we'll have something, but I did not feel like it was apropos to move forward without local restaurants being able to add in and contribute to that conversation. So I was hoping next meeting to be able to really have something, but that is where we're at.
Well,
Right
that's good. Thank you.
now. No problem. My pleasure.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Bob. I think when we did start this, Christina, I did suggest that you reach out to Lou Perillo. I don't know if you included him in the people that you.
I haven't, but I'd be happy to.
Yeah, I think you should. He's got a good history on this kind of stuff, so
He really does.
that might be helpful.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Anything else from commission members? Seeing none, let's move into our public hearing item 8A, Anthony Properties Realty, Inc., Brian B. Shu, applicant, Gary O'Connor, Pullman and Conley, LLC, agent, petition to enact a zoning regulation amendment of text to revise certain regulations pertaining to mixed-use transition zones, also known as MUT zones, to further the possibility of successful development. Zone Amendment 612. This was continued from January 12th. Ronald, just when you're ready, your name, address, just so we can get on the record. Jim Capone's working the lights tonight. Good job.
Thank you.
Mr. Shu, go ahead.
My name's Brian Shu, and I'm the Director of Development for Anthony Properties out of Dallas, Texas. And before the important people on our team get up here, I thought I would give you guys just kind of a quick review, tell you how we got here and what we're looking for. So we're seeking a text amendment for the property at the northeast corner of West Street and Curtis. And we would like to do several things here. We'd like to take an undeveloped property and do something that's already permitted within the MUT zoning, but with a few tweaks. Little higher buildings, a little denser, and a little less commercial space. We'd like to bring a much-needed property type to the community, one that doesn't currently exist, and that's a Class A multifamily community. We want to make approximately a $54 million investment in Southington, and allow for an additional $5 or $10 million in commercial investment. And that would result in about $900,000 to $1 million in additional property taxes. We're willing to help improve the town's affordable housing deficit. And we want to build something that complies with the Plcd while at the same time it adds less traffic than what is currently allowed in the MUT zoning and what other projects might potentially bring. And we want to be good neighbors by reducing sight lines, keeping buffers, not disturbing wetlands, etc. So with that overview, I'll hand it over to Gary O'Connor, who will get into more of the details.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, good evening. I won't go over what.
Gary, could
Ron-
you just give us your name and your
Yes,
address?
for the record, my name is Gary O'Connor. I'm with the law firm of Pullman and Comley, and we're located throughout the state, including, yes, Hartford, Connecticut. What we're handing out now is just a supplement to our presentation last week. And while I don't want to go over the entire presentation again, I do, for those that are here tonight that may not have been, I just thought I would highlight a couple of points.
Thank you.
And let's see. Okay. You've heard from Brian Shu, and as he explained tonight, and more so last year, or last week, or 2 weeks ago, actually, Anthony Properties is a national developer located in Texas, and they do commercial, mixed use, and residential. One of their strong suits is residential, Class A residential, particularly for empty nesters and what we call active adults, and also the young professional and skilled workforce. Mr. Shu has been up in the Northeast region, and he's been able to locate what he believes is a couple of great opportunities, one of which is in Southington on Queen Street, the corner of West Street and Curtis. And I have a picture here of the site. It's 41 acres. And as you can see from the next slide, and this is not anything that's new to you because it was discussed in the Malone and Broom analysis of the West Street corridor, I think in 2011. The site has a number of development challenges, including extensive wetlands, as you can see from this slide, and a number of significant easements that cross the site, again, limiting development opportunities. Also, the topography of the site is such that, which Ron will talk about in greater detail, I mean, the elevations go from anywhere from 300 feet to 180 feet. And they drop, I mean, significantly from West Street itself. So, again, as we discussed last week, 2 weeks ago, we wanted to be very transparent with what we do. Anthony Properties has a reputation of doing that. They want to be a good neighbor, and and they believe that this project certainly fits in with the neighborhood and the plan of conservation and development that the town has adopted. And so, while we didn't have to go to this extreme in our zoning change request, we believed it was important for you to understand exactly what we were doing. And as you can see, these are 33 unit buildings. There's a 5,000 square foot clubhouse with full amenities. There's a 17,250 square feet of commercial that's up on the corner of Curtis and West Street. you know, it includes a gym, also a lot of nature trails throughout the site, and even a dog park for those with dogs. The idea is to take advantage of the wetlands and you know, and make them part of the project and an amenity for the people that live there, with trails. And it also, the wetlands has the advantage also of providing a buffer along with the extensive tree growth in the area from the other neighborhoods and even from West Street itself. In order to do this project, Class A residential project, there's a number of units that are required, and that's one of the reasons that we are here looking to fine-tune the existing MUT text regulations. We also believe that our request for these text revisions is in line with the evolving market, both on a macro level throughout the country with office and retail, and also locally with what's happening on the West Street corner. There's, you know, increasing commercial, and the demand for commercial, quite honestly, is very limited relative to residential. And as we explained last week, we believe that by kind of fine-tuning that ratio, it creates a number of positive things for the area. I mean, one, we're not building commercial that will be filled with vacancies, and two, by increasing what we believe is a more affluent rental base in this area, they'll be able to support the existing commercial businesses that have been recently established in the area. So, you know, that's just another a slide of the surrounding area. You can see that it's, you know, there is any number of offices, restaurants, motels, hotels that have developed in the area.
Gary, while you're taking a breath there, I'm just going to remind you, as you may or may not be aware, anything you said to us at the last meeting is part of the record. We really, with all due respect, don't need you to rehash that. If there's something new, just to move it along maybe a little bit, by all means, feel free to go ahead.
The good news is I'm making my transition right now. I just was sensitive to some folks that may not have been here last week or 2 weeks ago, and I just wanted them to
appreciate that.
have that benefit. So, but it's a good segue. At the last meeting, a number of members of the commission asked some very good questions, and quite honestly, we listened and went back and tried to develop some answers that we hope to provide you with tonight. And these were in the areas of the plan of conservation and development, community benefits, and visibility of the buildings was another, in traffic. So those are the specifics that we will address tonight. There was a question at the last meeting about whether or not we had looked at the plan of conservation and development, and I answered yes, but I think maybe it was more of an invitation for us to explain why we think our fine-tuning of the text amendments is consistent with the PLCD. So that's what I'll try to do now. As you all know, the plan is conservation and development has been in effect since June 2016. The overall goal of the PLCD is to maintain the high quality of life in Southington and make the community a better place. And while the purpose and function of the PLCD is to address the physical development of Southington, it also addresses issues related to economic and social development. economic and social development. The next slide is just some excerpts from the PLCD regarding the need to address future housing needs. And, you know, you all can read it, but basically it suggests that Southington has a diverse range of housing, and there's a increased need for diversity in the types of housing that are required. And these are to address the housing needs of the aging population, provide choices for existing residents whose circumstances changed, offer more housing choices for younger people, offer housing choices for single people and for moderate income people. The PLCD also made reference to the Malone and McBroom analysis of West Street corridor. And, I've just extracted some of what I believe are the key points in that analysis. And, and it was, if you dig down deep regarding the MUT zone, they indicated this key was to achieve a smooth transition. Commercial development should be focused upon along West Street with residential situated towards the rear of the property. The analysis also indicated that it's important to foster economic development in the corridor, while protecting quality of life and encouraging good design and minimizing traffic impacts. And there was also additional recommendations about buffering whatever development in the MUT zone would be from, the other neighboring residences. And they also asked the commission to consider increasing the number of units per acre from 6 units to 10 units in order to encourage the level of residential development that positively boosts the spending power of the corridor without overburdening the transportation system. And we think those were all good points back in 2011, and they're even, I think, more significant points in 2022. We think that the project that we're proposing, and more importantly, the refinements in the regulations that we're requesting, are consistent with the PLCD. This project is geared primarily towards, as I said, empty nesters and young professionals. It certainly will address the current and future housing needs of the aging population and those active adults that are looking for a Class A residence, but one that they can lock and leave and maybe spend a few months down south, and one that they don't have to worry about shoveling or mowing the lawn, but yet it provides kind of the amenities that they're used to: clubhouse, fitness center, walking trails, and the like. And more importantly, or as importantly, it offers new housing options for young professionals and skilled workers. These are options for people that are residents of Southington, but may live farther away, or there are even people that we consider to move to Southington and live in the general region and are working as professionals and skilled workers at ESPN or Webster or COCC. One of the goals, and when Mr. Hsu did his market analysis, is that there are so many of these businesses located in the area that this community could tap into all those folks who now have to travel the distance. And instead of traveling, they could live in close proximity to their workplaces and also be a boost to the commercial and retail establishments in the area. And, one other point, although may not be, specifically addressed, is that Mr. Shu and Anthony Properties are willing to consider a set-aside for affordable housing. We want to be able to help solve that problem that Southington has, as opposed to increase it. So I think, for a lot of these reasons, I think the plan is consistent with the PLCD. The sewer and water in the area, I mean, the sewer, I think, has to be brought up a few hundred yards, but there are a couple of options there to bring it to the property. And that will actually benefit others in the area. And it really is proximate to a very good roadway system. It's West Street. It's certainly a major corridor, and Route 84 is a few hundred yards away. So, in sum, we believe that the project that we're suggesting, the tweaks that we want to make to the zoning regulations are all consistent with the PLCD, and it's we believe that it's consistent, and it's just an evolution of the market and demographics in the area. What these tweaks will actually do is actually minimize traffic conditions. As of right, we did this at a 2-to-1 ratio. We could certainly do a much greater density of commercial space, and commercial space, as Ron will point out, creates greater traffic flows than does residential. And he's had in one of the traffic experts in his firm prepare a limited traffic analysis comparing the amount of traffic that could be generated as of using under the permitted regulations right now with the higher commercial space, as opposed to what we're requesting, where that ratio is refined a bit in order to allow for additional a greater percentage of residential. And he'll go through that analysis in detail. I also, the other issues that I believe that we talked about were visibility. And again, Ron will go through and has some graphics and be able to show you how, because of the elevation change, a rather dramatic elevation change, that in reality these buildings won't be seen from West Street, and because of the wetlands and other geographical features, there's a pretty great natural buffer around this. And the idea of this project is to create that insular community. It's intended to draw, as I said, people that, young professionals and active adults, and so and provide the full array of amenities. So it can't, it's as important to Anthony Properties that this property be buffered, as it is for, addressing the neighbors' concerns as well. So I think that in that in that consideration, it's in lockstep with what the neighbors want as well. Finally, the project, as we look at it, there's just with COCC, Webster, ESPN, and a number of others, there's a tremendous number of jobs in the area that fit exactly what the type of market that we're pursuing, and it's a real need, I think, for the area to have that type of housing in approximate location to these employers. I mean, it cuts down. The traffic is already going there. I mean, so by keeping it there, there's less. These commuters are commuting less, which is better for the environment. They're closer to home. They're supporting the existing commercial and retail area in Southington, and there, as Mr. Shu pointed out, there's a tremendous amount of taxes that will be generated from this project. I mean, anywhere from $760,000 to over $1 million, and that's a lot of annual income, and it certainly. I mean, I like to break it down into something tangible. I mean, my wife's a teacher. I know how much she started with. I'm not sure how much the starting salary is here, but I do know it's an incredibly noble profession. But I think that we all want to invest in our teachers and our education system, make it better, and you can hire a lot of new teachers and maybe 16 to 20 and develop some new and better programs for the school system, and I think that can be done with a project like this that's not invasive at all with the neighborhood. It's actually, I think, complementary. It serves the purpose of the MUT zone, providing that transition from commercial to residential, and it does so by creating a Class A residential community that fills a real need for the town. So at this point, what I'd like to do is introduce Ron Beaumagen from Fuss & O'Neill, who actually will give you some real detail. Thank you.
So Ron, before you come up, I'm just going to remind commission members that issues relative to taxes is not something that we consider on this commission. That's for other commissions and boards in our town. That is not something that should weigh into any part of this decision. So with regards to those points, I would just ask you to disregard that, please. Ron, go ahead.
Good evening. My name is Ron Beaumagen. I'm a professional engineer with Fuss & O'Neill out of Manchester, Connecticut. And as Gary said, I'm going to just quickly cover the grading issues with the site. We have some section views. You see the first one here. I know it was a question last week or 2 weeks ago, what's this going to look like from West Street? So I have a couple of section views. Then I'm going to go through some of the traffic results that we got as part of the traffic study. Before I get into this, I'm going to hand out a copy of the traffic impact statement, and I'll explain it in a bit.
Like a handout. Thanks.
Thank you.
So I'm going to summarize that in a little bit, so you don't have to read through it. It's kind of lengthy. It goes into great detail with, like the calculations and how the number of trips came. So don't worry about reading it now. I'll summarize it in the presentation here. Okay, so as we discussed, and Gary discussed again tonight, the grading has some significant grading challenges. It slopes off greatly from west to east, from West Street down to the wetlands to the east. Here is a section view through from West Street, which is on the left here. This is West Street. And then what you see here on the top screen is the first building. That's the commercial building. It's a one-story building, we're assuming, because we don't have a design yet. This is just hypothetical. So commercial building right along West Street. These two buildings here, Commercial Street, right at the corner of West and Curtis. Grade slopes off greatly all the way to the back. And then this tall building in the back, that's the four-story residential building in the back. So if you see sitting in your car on West Street or walking down West Street, you look to your right or to your left, what you're going to see is the top of the buildings, possibly the roof line. Moving further to the north on the site, again, West Street is on the left up here in the corner. Residential buildings to your right. These are the four-story residential buildings that we're proposing in the text change. And again, your eyesight is brought to the top floor and the roof line of these potential four-story buildings. So just to quickly summarize, I'm not going to spend too much time on this. This is what we're asking for. It's a 41 3/4 acre site. Right now, the regulations state you can build 5 units per acre. That would result in 208 units. Using Anthony Properties buildings, that would be 7 buildings that are 10,733 square feet each, resulting in 75,000, a little over 75,000 square feet in just building footprint. That's just the footprint. Using the residential to commercial ratio of 2:1, you would have a little over 37,000 square feet of commercial space required to offset the number of residential that would be part of the current regulations. What we're proposing in the text amendment, again, 41 3/4 acres, 6.5 units per acre, 271 units. That would be 8 buildings using the Anthony Properties building. 85,000, a little under 86,000 square feet of residential space. And using a 5:1 ratio, that would require us to build 17,000, a little over 17,000 square feet of commercial space. What does that mean in terms of traffic? I know that was a question last time we were here. So let me summarize that. Now, the report that you have in front of you is a little bit more detailed than what I'm going to show you. This is just to summarize again what's permitted, what we're asking for, and what the change is. So we're asking for an additional 63 units as part of this text change, and a reduction of about 20,000 square feet of commercial space. So in that traffic impact statement, we analyzed 3 different scenarios in terms of traffic impacts to the site. Commercial is a little vague. It can be medical office, it can be retail, it can be restaurants, it can be movie theater. So we took 3 different scenarios. We used 3 different examples. So the first scenario here, we used the 208 units. This is as permitted on the site now, 208 units. Out of that 17,000, or out of the 30-something thousand square feet of commercial space, we assumed 7,500 square feet of restaurant, high turnover restaurant. That's probably what is most marketable on the site, is another restaurant, probably on the corner, good visibility. So that 7,500 square foot restaurant is going to be used throughout each scenario, because that's probably going to be the most marketable commercial space there. And then the bottom one, 30,000 square feet of medical dental office space, that's going to be 212 total trips per day. So again, 208 new apartment units, 162 trips per day. High turnover restaurant, 140 trips per day. And then the medical office, 212, with a total of 514 trips per day. That's as permitted according to the regulations. What we're proposing to do, the 271 units, resulting in 214 trips per day. Again, the 7,500 square foot restaurant, 140 trips per day, same as above. And then the remainder of that would be medical office, so we can compare apples to apples, and that would result in 68 trips per day and a total of 422, with a reduction of 92 trips per day. So by hopefully approving this text amendment, using this scenario, there's a reduction in the number of trips per day using our traffic analysis. In the second scenario, same number of units, same square foot of high turnover sit-down restaurant. This time we swapped it out with general office space. That resulted in 121 trips per day, resulting in a total of 423. And then dropping that into the program with the text to change, we have 46 trips per day, resulting in a total of 400 and a reduction of 23 trips per day. That one's pretty close to even. Then the third one, we used the strip retail plaza for the remaining square footage of commercial space. This resulted in 571 total trips per day in the permitted, using your regulations as it is now. And in the proposed condition, we have a total of 458 trips per day, resulting in 113 trips less, assuming this text change goes through, than what would be actually permitted. And all of this, the traffic inputs, the data that we use to come up with the number of trips, it all came from the Institute of Transportation Engineers, IT. It's a standard manual that is typically used throughout the state for traffic impact studies. Turn it over to Gary.
Chairman, I'd like to just submit this as part of the record. And I don't know if you formally would like me to give this to the clerk or.
Is that the traffic study, Gary?
This is a traffic study.
Is that the one that, Ronald, is that the same one you just handed out? You got one? Okay.
And just for the record, it's a traffic impact statement dated January 31st, 2022, prepared by Fuss and O'Neill and signed by Mark G. Vertucci, and he's vice president at Fuss and O'Neill and one of the traffic experts at the company. At this point, what I'd like to do is just conclude our presentation by bringing Brian back up. He's the guy you really want to hear from, and we'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thanks.
I'm not so sure about that, but I don't need to rehash what Gary and Ron have explained. This is a really good site. It's located at a good intersection, right off of an interstate. You've got a good work base north and south. You've got good retail support, very close by as well. It's a vacant piece of land right now, but I guess my point is this is going to turn into something someday, and someday could be very soon. I think we've heard your comments and questions and concerns from the last meeting, and I think we've done our best to address them. I think we have shown that what we would propose to do is going to be less impactful, I guess, on the traffic concerns. The building height, with it being so low, with the topography the way it is, hopefully that's kind of a non-issue, but we like this site. We would like to develop it and be around for the long haul. We're a build and hold developer. We're capable and ready and willing and able. We don't have to go outside and go out and seek outside equity, things like that. So we're ready to go. So I appreciate y'all's time and listening to us and consideration of this text amendment. And if there are any questions, Gary and Ron and I will be happy to answer them.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any commission members with questions? Commissioner Santago.
So, again, thank you for your presentation. That you did a nice job. It's very well done. It's very professional. We appreciate it. You're asking for a zone change, not a site change. So my first question is, I understand why you're asking for a change at the corner of Curtis and West. The MUT zone, however, is also at the corner of West Queen Street and West Street. So why are these changes that you're asking for also applicable there? And I'll point out, because we have to consider a zone change, not a site change. Because you're asking for a zone change. Right. Change to the rules for the zone. And I'll point out one of your changes, which is the height thing. And I appreciate that. So for the site where you are, you're right, that slopes downhill. I get it. And one thing you didn't mention that I thought was also a nice idea or premise, I don't know if it works out that way, was because I think you had said cars go into the building, that would also minimize the asphalt footprint environmentally because you wouldn't need as much asphalt for cars. So conceptually, I get that. And you wouldn't see it from the street. If I drive up the street a little bit at the MUT zone on the other corner, the topography is totally different. And it's not like that. So and now I've just created, if I change it, we change it, an as of right, which means once it's an as of right, landowners can do what they want and we can't deny that. So why should we consider your changes not at this particular location, but at the other location as well?
When we considered our options and trying to make this project work on the site, we looked into a number of things, including the variances, which from a legal standpoint is proving hardship is really impossible. But we were also very, I guess, heartened when we found out that there was really only one other MUT zone. And when we did our further due diligence, we found one, it was smaller. I think it's 26 acres. And we also noted that it is surrounded by commercial and industrial zones. I mean, it's probably, more insulated from a residential zone than the property that we're talking about right now. And as far as the height is concerned, if the development went forward with the existing regulations, you would still have those 4-story buildings because it would be a mix of commercial and be a mix of residential and non-residential. I believe that's how it's defined in the zoning regulations. So you would still have the 4-story, but we are trying to consciously do here is increase the volume of residential versus commercial. And as we tried to explain, I think there's a lot of good reasons. So in doing so, you create more solely residential buildings, and in which case, right now, you can only build the 3 stories. But if we did the project without the text amendments that we're suggesting, you would still have 4-story buildings. It'd just be that maybe the first floor would be commercial and the top 3 would be residential. So I don't see it as having any increased impact on visibility in that respect. And as I said, fortunately, it's one zone and a zone that has a lot of industrial and commercial surrounding it.
Okay, So for us to change, and I appreciate all the talk you did on your project, but quite honestly, we can make a change, you could go away and somebody else put something there. So really, none of that's relevant. In the grand scheme of things, because we're making a change to regulations.
Right.
Right? It's not a site plan, it's not a project approval. It's should I change the rules? So for me, when I consider, should I change the rules? The first thing I look at, are the rules unclear or are they no longer applicable? Are they confusing? That sort of a thing. Like, why should I change my rules? And what I heard in your argument was, and please correct me, that's why we're having this, was the current economic condition does not make what I want to do economically feasible right now. So, because every other argument, our current regulations does that. So what I'm hearing is you're asking us to change our rules because the current market conditions are not favorable. That's what I heard. So correct me or feed on that.
And it's probably because I didn't articulate it as well as I could. There's two factors. One is it's a change in the paradigm of residential, the residential market. It's not just temporary market conditions. Hybrid office is something that's here to stay. I don't believe remote is 100% remote is here to stay, but the concept of hybrid is, and retail as well. I mean, that whole industry has changed. I mean, that changed even before the pandemic, but it's been accelerated by the pandemic, and people are more willing and generally like shopping online, and they like having products delivered to their house. I mean, is it going to be 100% of that? No, but it's going to be significant and dramatic enough change that it will affect the whole retail paradigm as well. So that's one kind of macro reason, and the second is more local. There has been a large amount of commercial development in the West Street corridor, and we believe that when you couple those two things, it's not just what we want to change because there's a short-term fluctuation in the market. It's because of those two factors that there's a real evolution that's taken place here, and we believe that the zoning regulations have to evolve as well. And what we're proposing is to take into consideration that there is more need for residential. The concept of having all these commercial spaces under buildings, and the demand is not there, and and in this kind of particular area, we believe won't be there. So what we're suggesting is that it's reasonable to fine-tune the regulations to have them evolve with the change in the real estate market as a whole.
Thank you. I'm done, Mr. Chair. Yeah.
Commissioner Salka?
As part of this development, we talked about affordable housing. And if I remember right, you said it was like 5% of the number of units would be affordable. Was I correct in that?
Yeah, we were asked to consider it, and our initial reaction was, look at, we don't want to make things worse for the town. We want to make them better, and so we would consider setting aside a certain percentage for affordable housing.
Because my concern on this is that right now Southington is about, and I'm going to throw out a number, it could be plus or minus, about 900 units short of the state requirement of 10% affordable housing. And if we go with, even if we go with 5%, we are taking a step back So instead of 900 units, it's more, we have more units that we'd have to put in as affordable, if I'm clear on that. If we go 10%, it's a net equal. So by only going with a 5% affordable number, we are actually stepping back. So instead of 900 units, we probably have to have 950 units more to get to that 10%,
Right.
which means we have to put them somewhere. So I guess what I'm leading up to is that you mentioned about 5%. And I'm wondering that even if we go with 10%, we're breaking even on the number of affordable units throughout our town. So I'm saying, would you consider at least 10% as part of this
Yeah, and
proposal?
I'll let the, Mr. Shu answer the question. Although I'm not a affordable housing expert, I think that the numbers are a little different. And again, I am going to readily admit that I'm not, but I thought that in looking at this, the deficit was like 5.9%. So you're right, to the extent it 5% was initially offered. And that was our first, you asked us, and we said, sure. I mean, but if it is a number that is something higher than that, your percentage deficit, then yeah, that's something that we would consider. Absolutely.
I may come back, but that's it for now.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr.
Thanks,
Chairman.
Bob. Any other members of the commission have any questions for the applicant? Commissioner Coles?
Can I use your? Thank you, Mr. Chair. Two questions. Thank you for expanding on your presentation. That was great. So I'm not going to ask about taxes because that's not on the radar here. But what is, when we kind of look at something like this, is health and safety. And so with the change in ratios, we're looking at a higher population of residential dwellings. And this is, I guess, a general question about how many typical emergency service calls would we anticipate for a development of this magnitude?
I'm afraid I don't have a good answer for that. I could certainly look into it and just kind of come up with an industry average, but I'm afraid I don't have an answer for you.
It's tough, and I appreciate the fact that depending on the population that we have there and that sort of thing, that will sway greatly. So, any feedback would be great.
Sure.
The second question I had, so we talked about the clubhouse and the gym. I'm just trying to figure out if that is part of the calculation for the square footage of residential space, or if that's part of the calculation for the square footage of the commercial space.
Go ahead.
It's not considered space for the reg, so it's not considered residential, obviously, either. So it's not in the numbers. That's just it's an amenity as opposed to fitting into one of those particular categories.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Thank you,
Well,
Mr. Chair.
Any other questions from members of the commission?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to ask just that one question that
Go ahead, Bob.
that we're asking for a zoning change here. And I'm just wondering, and I think it's more for staff, is that does this change affect any other regulation within our total portfolio here? Sometimes there's a height in another section of the book. And I'm just wondering, does this change stand alone, or does it impact anything else within our zoning regulations that we have to think about? And you may not be able to answer it right now, but I think it's an important question that we should resolve.
As far as height and all that, that's identified as the MUT zone. So Peter asked me earlier if another section applied to that, and it doesn't. That's specific to the other sections. So from height, stories, those are specific to the MUT zone.
Okay.
I haven't gone through the whole full thing to see if there's any implications. But
I would ask you to do that.
I think it's pretty straightforward regulation for that specific zone. So
Right. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Bob. Christina Volpe.
I'm
go
so
ahead.
sorry.
Go ahead.
I do have a question
No
for Mary Ellen
apologies
as
at all.
well. Could you just remind me when the West Street traffic corridor study is supposed to be done again? I know that we had a meeting back in September of 2021. I just find like though these numbers, it's really great to always have that visual and that understanding, but I know we're currently undergoing a study of what traffic could look like there. So I'm wondering that timeline, if you or anyone else of my fellow commissioners know.
I think we were looking at April.
Okay.
I know it's being reviewed internally from them, so however long that takes, but I think the last time we talked to them, they said around April.
Yeah, I just find the timing of these conversations to be pretty pertinent to that data that's going to be readily available pretty soon. So I appreciate that. Thanks. Nothing else.
Okay, you all set? Bottom, go ahead.
So the traffic statement that we gave you just compares what's in the regulations compared to what the text changes. It doesn't have anything to do with existing traffic on West Street.
Okay.
So that would come during the site plan approval process.
Of course. Yes.
Yeah.
Good to know. Thank you.
Okay.
Well done.
So I just have a couple questions relative to the language that's in there and maybe process. So, Gary, maybe for you, maybe a little bit for you, Mary Ellen, with regards to the affordable housing component, would we not need to include a provision in this proposed zone text amendment change to provide for a set aside, whatever that number is, whether it's 10%, 11%, pick a number type of thing? Would we not want to include that in there? And I say that I trust you all as being honest.
Yeah.
I don't know who may be behind you. In other words, if you were to turn around and sell this, as Peter said, it goes with the property, and it even applies to a property a little bit up the street. I want to make sure that if we make a zone text amendment change, while 10% at 250 units is 25 units, is still a drop in the bucket. And as Commissioner Salka smartly and intelligently pointed out, it leaves us at a wash because you're adding numbers to our overall portfolio, thereby not really affecting the bottom line number of 5.2% or whatever number we're at right now. But we have to find these wherever we can find them. So I guess my question is, again, do we not need to add that into the proposed text amendment change that's before us? And I think that would mean if we were to do that, that you all would have to accept that as part of that as well.
And, I'll defer to your experts, but we thought that this was something that would come up during the special permit site plan process, because then exactly, the number of units, because there may be topographical constraints out here when we do engineering that reduce the number, we thought that it would be that at that point that the request will be made. Be honest with you, I haven't thought about this and don't know if it's appropriate for the zoning amendment. I mean, it's something that we're willing to deal with either here or in the in the special permit site plan process. So
I think that it can be brought out during the special permit process, right? But if we wanted to write it into the regulation, which we do write percentages into our regulations, and I'll point out the arch zone regulation does require a 10% set aside for any housing development that falls under that regulation. I would prefer personally myself to see it in the actual regulation, which kind of sets the standard and says at least a certain percentage within that. So we would have to add that in here. And in order to do that, we would need you all to agree to accept that.
Well,
am I right, Mary Ellen?
Yeah, and you couldn't just write it in.
We can't just arbitrarily write it in there.
File it with the, you couldn't just write something like that in right now and just add it in, because that wasn't what was filed with the town clerk. So we would need to have it modified, refile it with the town clerk. and then take it up at another public hearing. So I think you could we could double check. I think you could leave the public hearing open. If they wanted to present something modified, then we could file it with the town clerk, leave it open for the appropriate time, and then move on.
There's another piece there. You mentioned that currently the site is not serviced by sewer. And I don't want to see the town have to pay for y'all to come in and get your sewer. So I would prefer to see that, if we were to move forward, see that as a part of the regulation, that any infrastructure improvements that were required to be made, public water, public sewer, that cost is borne by the applicant and not by the town of Southington.
Right, that could be a condition of the, the site plan approval. I think you could have general language that says that the property shall be serviced by, sewer and water, at the expense of the owner of the property. Something
You're
to
an
that
attorney.
effect.
You can
Yeah.
maneuver.
Yeah,
it
we
any
can
way you
figure
want,
that
but
out.
Here's where I go. Is that at the end of the day, if we were to adopt the zone text amendment,
Sure.
we're beholden by that zone text amendment. An applicant comes in, doesn't have any of the stuff that I just mentioned in there, comes in with an application, says, no, I don't want to do affordable housing, and I want the town to pay for the sewer, and kind of puts it on us. We make a denial of that. Now we're in a legal situation of having to go to court
Yeah.
and fight that, because the applicant may or may not say that we were being arbitrary in our decision-making. So if it's written in the regulation, then the arbitrary potential there is removed.
I like the way you're thinking. We have no problem with including that and incorporating it into the requested text regulation refinements. And I have to talk to my client about what that magic number is for affordable, but certainly it should be higher than what your deficiency is now. So it's something that makes it better, not worse. I'm okay
Right.
with that.
And we do have precedent for a 10% set aside. As I said, our
Yeah.
arch zones do require a 10% set aside. So that number kind of sticks in my brain, although it doesn't really help the situation, certainly doesn't make it worse, which I think is beneficial.
It
And
may make it better depending on what your deficiency is, but I hear what you're saying.
right. Okay. Commissioner Santago.
Just to, thank you. So just on, and I understand your logic, on this part of the site, is the other MUT zone served by city water and sewer, et cetera? And there's not affordable housing there. So now, because I keep going back to that site,
Yeah,
because it's a zone change, it's not a site change.
Yep.
So I
Peter,
keep,
if you, it's a text change.
text change,
So
correct,
if you change the text, for
Yep.
the MUT zone, it applies to the MUT zone.
correct.
So it applies to both
So,
properties.
right, and so what I'm saying is, any of these contingencies we just said, now, that site is all non-conforming.
No, it's
Right.
it's not non-conforming. It's just if an
John,
applicant comes in and tries
It has to-
and files an application to develop that site,
They have
they
to
would
do
have
that.
to live by whatever that regulation change is.
Yep.
Just like if we were to change this regulation, do everything the applicant is asking us to do, they would be, any future development on that site would have to adhere to whatever this language is. So I'm trying to be a little bit proactive, I guess.
No, I'm with
in
you.
making sure that if it's not served by water or sewer, that future development, if that were to happen, that it would be, at least not at the town's expense.
With
type
you.
of thing.
No, I'm with you on that one. All I'm saying is if I have a house on that other site that doesn't have sewer and they want to do something, they got to pay.
They'd have to connect.
They'd have to connect and it'd be on their nickel versus ours, right?
If they were to pull a building
It
permit.
would be prudent, if they're looking for that type of density, under this zone, it would be prudent to extend sanitary sewer.
Right.
There's no way they would be able to
Right.
get that density with septic.
Right. And that site being smaller, if we do this, we've just approved a bigger density to a smaller lot, right? up there. Do you know, does sewers go up there?
It does.
It does? So there's sewers up
On West Queen.
on West Queen? Okay. I keep going back to the other MUT site because it's a zone text change for a zone, not this particular site. So I just keep going back to there about what we're doing. Is it applicable there too? Okay, I'm done talking.
Okay. Any other questions of the applicant from members of the commission? Seeing none, thank you, Gary. We're going to open it up to members of the public right now. If we have any members of the public who would like to speak in favor of this application, please come forward. Again, give us your name and address and share your thoughts with us.
We don't know this guy.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Commission members. For the record, Stephen Judas with the Office of Harry Cole & Son at 876 South Main Street in Plantsville. This property has been difficult from a development standpoint for a while.
Steve, could you just speak a little bit?
Yeah, let me get this a little closer. Better?
Yeah, well,
There
great.
you go. How you?
Us old people, it's hard.
Yeah. I was saying, from a topographic standpoint, it's a very difficult piece of property to develop. And I think from a commercial standpoint, that topography kind of gets in the way. The corner is really the ideal place for commercial development. And if I wasn't here at the previous meeting, but I don't know if we talked a little bit about the history of the MUT zone. I think it was brought in by a developer, petitioned the commission to change these two properties or this corridor into this MUT zone. And they also had a ratio that was higher than what the commission actually adopted. I think the commission was a little cautious about it and wasn't sure they wanted to move forward with that ratio. So they downgraded it. And to be honest with you, the developers I've had come to my office, look at this property, and even the Toll family themselves, that ratio just doesn't seem to work for a developer that can come in and do the type of Class A development that you're seeing tonight. So I support it. I think it's a good idea for this area. And I think the commission would be happy with the results when it's done. So I don't know these guys at all. I'm just, I think it's a good thing. So to my 2 cents. Thank you.
Yeah, he's on another team.
Yeah. Name of that firm again?
I don't know.
Any other members of the public who would like to speak in favor of this application at this time? Seeing none, is there any members of the public who'd like to speak in opposition to this application? Come up to the microphone, sir. Just give us your name and your address, please.
My name is William Shea. I live at 500 Curtis Street, so I'm here for selfish reasons. I don't, those are tough acts to follow because these guys are professionals. I'm just a resident. But in the 16 years we've lived on Curtis Street, we've already seen some pretty significant increase in traffic because of the development on West Street and Queen Street. And we're in a position where, that's a nice go-between between the two of them, and we understand that. I understand that development and improvement is an important part of being a vibrant community, and it's necessary. I just want to make sure that the board considers the traffic implications. What attracted us to that location was we call it country convenient. It's like convenient, but where we are on Curtis Street, it's like being in the country. Except for a little noise from the highway, you wouldn't know you weren't in Vermont or something. And it's that character of the community, of that neighborhood, which is attractive. And again, I understand you need development, you need improvement. I just want to request that the board seriously consider the traffic implications that might develop, because my understanding is the sole entrance and exit are on Curtis Street, right near the intersection with West Street. And anyone who's ever been up there, 7 o'clock in the morning, 5 o'clock in the evening, right now, it's a nightmare. I can't imagine what it will be if there's 256 apartments adding to that congestion. And I just hope you think about that in your deliberations, because I love the neighborhood I live in, and I would hate to see it turn into a throughway. That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you for coming out tonight. Appreciate you sharing your thoughts with us. Is there any other members of the public who'd like to speak in opposition to this application at this time? Seeing none, what's our thoughts on the status on keeping the public hearing open?
Mr. Chair, I would feel comfortable with that.
You think we should keep it open?
I do, just so that maybe possibly we could get some revisions or just keep the discussion going based off of what we did tonight. I think we are making progress towards something, but I do hear the community and their concerns. So I am apropos for leaving it open.
Yeah. Mary Ellen, do we have a time frame on this one? We have time. And I agree with Christina. I think that, this is a relatively big potential change to our zoning regulations. And I think taking some time to deliberate on it is not a bad thing. But any other commissioners have any other thoughts? Commissioner Solka.
Just a question on timing. Our next meeting would be on the 14th or somewhere around there. Within that period of time, we've still asked, and I think you asked for perhaps a change to the MUT zone that they're submitting with regards to the amount of affordable housing, et cetera. That would give them time as well to decide what they want to do, whether they want to submit that change. So I think it's appropriate that we perhaps table this till the next meeting or continue the public hearing. So.
Yeah. So, Mr. Chu, just what's your sense on us keeping it open? You okay with that?
Well,
I mean, should phrase it a little different. We can call a roll call now. I mean, you want to roll that one? So
that's a little bit of a loaded question. I'm a developer, so I like things to go faster, but I certainly understand if the commission would like to take more time, then I'm okay with it.
Okay. Peter, yeah.
Yeah, just the only thing that I would say, because I'm okay closing it, is that if we're going to wait 2 weeks, what's different in 2 weeks? Certainly, the public can certainly come and we could have more people come and talk for it. So for that reason, that's always good. We always like hearing people, what they have to say on both sides of it. But we don't need another 300-page thing, being facetious. You did a great job. So what's different? And I think to your point, Commissioner Salka, in regards to if there was a change, so what's different? So is it going to be a change there?
Well, that's what I'm concerned about it with regards to the sewer, regards to the affordable housing units. I think that gives them a chance to think about it.
Yeah.
Then we're looking at a final document that we're voting on. Right now, we don't have a final document.
So if that's the thing about what's different in the next 2 weeks, about them to consider that if they want something else, and they can say, no, I don't want to consider that, which is your right to do that.
So I have a question. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Or not, then that's the what's different part, in addition to more public. Is that fair?
That's fair. Mm-hmm.
Folks, in terms of like why they keep something open?
So again, I'll go back to what I said earlier and say that this is a pretty significant change if we were to take this up. And I think it, giving it an extra 2 weeks is not, well, I understand your point that you'd like it to move as quickly as possible. I think that from our side, it requires some deliberation. And let me say it this way too. I would encourage you to have conversations amongst yourselves and to consider some of the things that were brought up tonight and whether you're willing to make some tweaks to what you put in front of us. And again, as Peter said, if you decide not to do that, that's certainly your prerogative and we'll act on whatever you give to us. But
no, understood. I have a question. If we do need to refile to get some of this verbiage into the text amendment, do we have time to do that so that it can be acted on in 2 weeks?
Well, I would want to talk to the town attorney tomorrow, because if you're going to revise it, again, that's not what was filed with the town clerk, so we would need to file with the town clerk, and it's supposed to be 10 days before a hearing. So it would probably push you into the first meeting in March, and at which point we actually might need a time extension of the 35 days. But let me circle back with the town attorney tomorrow, and we can talk.
Okay.
Make sure that all that works out.
All right.
So, Mr. Chu, I'll also let you know a little piece of information as well. I will not be here at the next meeting. So I won't be here on the 15th. So even if you were to make the change, which I think with 10 days, you still, because today's the 1st, 10 days puts you at the 10th or 11th. I think that we could still have the hearing, but I wouldn't be here on the 15th to participate in that conversation, which is fine if the commission decides that they want to act on it at that time or if they can. But I just want to let you know.
Thank you.
So, okay. We all set? Okay, so we'll leave this public hearing open, and we'll move on to item 8B. Carrier Group, Inc., special permit application for a 6-lot open space preservation subdivision, property located at 927, 935, and 951 Shuttle Meadow Road, owned by the Dizzle family, LLC, in an R80 zone, SPU 658. This was continued from January 18th. Mr. Judas,
We had the other nice guy last time.
Brian.
We had,
This person looks familiar.
yeah, we had the other very intelligent person coming up last time.
You could just bear with me for one moment.
He was very prepared, by the way,
I got to set up before you guys started.
just to bring that up.
The hotel's on.
I think he has to keep.
Let's talk about it. I don't know what I'm missing here.
I got a very small.
This is for the meeting. And it's still got Shuttle Meadow.
No, I'm kidding.
It's a Shuttle Meadow?
Oh, having flashbacks.
Wow.
Nice and big, I like that.
It's for my failing eyesight.
I was just thinking that. It was just that I'm having
It's
flashbacks.
getting bigger.
Yeah.
No, not like this. Like this.
I quit. I wouldn't be able
This
to.
would have been.
You need readers, maybe.
Oh, Shuttle Meadow, what am I thinking?
Most important piece of the presentation is the cheaters.
There we go. We just had.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and Commission members. For the record, Stephen Judas with the Office of Harry Cole & Son at 876 South Main Street in Plantsville. We are, before I get started, will request a continuance tonight of this hearing to the next meeting. We are going before the Wetland Commission or Conservation Commission on Thursday. So pending that, we will see how things go and hopefully see you in 2 weeks. I wasn't able to attend the last meeting. My associate Brian Panico is here with me. He came and talked to you guys, and we went back and took a look at our application and some of the comments that were brought up. One of the things we talked about was some presentation materials that you guys could take a look at, and some changes that we made. We're proposing to make to the site. My first slide, I don't want to get too deep into what I was already presented. As you know, it's a 9.9 acre parcel. It's an R80 zone, bounded by Plainville to the north and Shuttle Meadow to the road, residential properties on either side and across the street. There's 2 existing houses on the property, and it's a relatively flat piece of property. It generally slopes from east to west, and there's a wetland and a water body to the rear of the property. Our proposal is a open space preservation subdivision. This is permitted under your regulations 3-07 of the zoning regulations. This slide here just shows the GIS map of the site with the 2 homes. There's a little path that runs to the site, and then the pond in the back. This is an aerial site, just to give you an idea. What's wooded, there's a open fields in the middle, and there's a few outbuildings on the property as well. Part of our application, we're required to provide a conventional subdivision application, or conventional concept plan, I'm sorry, is what this plan is here. This gives you an idea of what our initial look at this property was from an R80 conventional development. It's five lots, and it's a 750-foot roadway. It's not as desirable, we felt, as the open space subdivision, and that's why we encouraged the applicant to move forward towards an open space subdivision. So this is the plan that we came up with. It's 6 lots with an area of open space at the front, and then conservation easements. We've made modifications to this plan from what you saw at the last meeting to kind of call out some additional conservation areas, just from a protections perspective for natural features and so on. we've also, in this plan, we've changed our total conservation areas. We bumped that up to 1.93 acres, and for a total of 2.3 acres of open space and conservation area. And we tried to designate that around the perimeter of the property to prevent clearing up to the property lines, to protect the abutting properties, and to protect the natural resources around the backside of the property. One of the biggest things that we wanted to incorporate and wanted to convey to you was our plans for the open space out front. Carrier is a well-established grade A development company, and when they do developments, they do it probably one of the best in the state, is what I would describe them. And some of the owners and developers are going to actually live in this subdivision, so you can imagine it's going to be first rate and top notch. So we talked about what their plans were for the open space out front, and this was what they gave us as an example from one of their other developments. Mowed walking trails with meadow areas, rail fencing, street trees, and so on. This would give a passive area of recreation for the neighbors that live in the subdivision, and probably other neighbors as well. Walk their dog, take a walk, smell the wildflowers, and just enjoy it a little bit. It doesn't need to be a large area. It just needs to be well appointed and something that they'll be proud of and can enjoy, and really gives a sense of a nice community when you pull into the subdivision. So that's what their intention was, and I love it. I was hoping that the commission would like it as well when I saw it. And you may have seen their developments around Farmington, Glastonbury, and this is the type of product that they produce, and this is what you would see at this development. I just wanted to talk briefly about the open space considerations. I know there was some talk about 5 lots versus 6 lots, and why do we deserve the 6th lot? And I just wanted to have some conversation about that, and talk a little bit about why we've gone this route and why we proposed this. I know that some of the commissioners have seen the open space preservation applications before, and some of you have not. But the regulation, the intent of the regulation was to provide an alternative basically to an as-of-right subdivision, and to conserve and preserve land, enhance appearance, character, natural beauty, and so on. There's verbiage in there about preserving land for parks or recreational purposes, conserve forest, wildlife, natural features, also to encourage the flexibility of design and development, and also most importantly is to reduce the network of utilities, shorter roads, less infrastructure, less impervious surfaces, and that's what we see when we do open space subdivisions. We think that this application, the regulation asks for at least 2 or more of those considerations, and we think that we kind of incorporate most of those considerations into this application. We're reducing the road length by over 200 feet. We're reducing the impervious surfaces. We're reducing the infrastructure. As you know, this will be a town road. It'll be owned and maintained forever by the town, and the less infrastructure we have there, the overall cost to the town of Southington will be reduced for maintenance in the future. And I guess you may say, how do you do that? How is that done? And I guess I jumped into that. The regulation kind of provides an incentive to the developer. It says that the incentive to developer is less infrastructure cost and the availability of additional building lots. Now, in this situation, we're proposing 1 building lot. Other subdivisions, we've had as many as 6 to 7 additional building lots in open space subdivisions. It also provides an incentive to the town and the community because there's less infrastructure to maintain for years to come, and there's an increase in preservation of land and resources. So less stormwater running off, less pavement, less drainage, things like that. And you may say why? Why does the town offer this incentive? Why does the developer want to take it? And it comes down to a bunch of different aspects. It comes down to a better product. We think that this product is better than the 5 lot, and the 5 lot, I'm not showing a conventional subdivision. I don't think we could make work. I know it's tight against the wetlands and the buffers, but we did keep all the houses out of the upland review areas, and we could go that route. But we really truly believe that this subdivision is just a better product for the developer and for the community itself. So I'm hoping that when you look at all the aspects of it, you see that this is really just a better win-win for everybody involved. The R40 lots that we have here now, there's less lot area to be cleared, less lawn area, there's less driveways, and I would imagine you'll see less smaller houses as well as compared to an R80 lot. R80 lots, people generally build pretty big McMansions on them, and we think that in this neighborhood it's mostly R40 residential homes across the street and on this side of the property, and that this development fits in very well with what we're trying to accomplish here. It kind of covers the gist of what I wanted to get out to you regarding why we think the 6th lot is a reasonable request. As you know, as I mentioned, we're going to continue this. We have some comments to address from staff, and I guess I'd ask for any comments that you might have for me or the developer at this point.
Okay. Thanks, Steve. Any questions of the applicant from members of the commission? Commissioner Salka.
Steve, on the front parcel that you're talking, that's part of the open space,
Yes.
who would maintain that?
That would be a homeowners association made up of the owners of the lots.
The homeowners association would be required to maintain that?
Yes, sir. In the past, they would be deeded to the town for the town to maintain, but as I'm sure Marion and Jim will tell you, that the town doesn't want to maintain smaller parcels like this.
So, but the bottom line is that if the association is going to maintain that, they may not appreciate just having the surrounding neighbors. First of all, there's no sidewalks there, so the surrounding neighbors probably wouldn't use it. So it would be basically for those 5 or 6, the homeowners association.
Generally, the intention is for the homeowners association. They own it, they maintain it, they would insure it. I don't think they're going to be out there chasing people off of it, but
Because typically when we think of open space, though, we think of, it's connected to another piece of open space and it's available for the public to walk on. So this is not that.
Yes, but if you read the open space preservation subdivision regulations, it specifically states that open space preservation subdivisions are more about just open space for the general public. It's about preservation, it's about recreation, and if this recreation is just for these residents, it still meets the intent of that regulation. I think that those are the things that I wanted to kind of talk to you about and try to emphasize that there's many different ways of accomplishing that goal in the regulation, and this is one of the ways that, along with the conservation easements that we're proposing, we thought it was a positive thing for this development. And the homeowner association is going to maintain it. That's one of the things that, if it was a town-owned open space, it would just grow back to natural, and it would, which isn't a bad thing, but we think at the front of the subdivision, we want something that's appealing and inviting.
Thank you.
All set. Any other questions? Commissioner Tedesco.
Thanks. I appreciate that, Commissioner. Chairman. I wanted to follow up on the natural diversity database. In the last meeting, I had asked what particular species will be affected by this development, and also by the change in density of houses versus the 2-acre property versus the smaller.
So with every development, we submit a NDDB request to the DEP. We don't always get a prompt response. So I don't think we have a response from them yet as to what specific item might be out there. But what I would say that this development has a less tree clearing and less development than a typical conventional subdivision. Anything that they come back and with recommendations, if I had to guess, you'll probably see a box turtle type of, this to me seems like a perfect box turtle type of environment. They will have recommendations, and developer will have to follow those recommendations as they go through the development process. But when we talk about environmental, there's also, if you look off site, there's a vernal pool off to our left on the abutting property. And that's a kind of environmentally sensitive area. So one of the things we talked about with our soil scientists was this type of drainage system is an underground system. It doesn't provide sometimes detention basins can provide a false sense of nesting for certain vernal creatures, and it's better to not have a detention basin near a vernal pool. So we didn't propose one on this one. We proposed underground storage, which is also helps with MS4, which is another DEP requirement. So we think overall it's a much better proposal, and that anything that we come back with from NDDB, we have to deal with and we have to address.
Great.
Did I answer your question? Kind of.
As best you can for the moment, yes.
Thank you.
I appreciate it, though, yeah. Thank you.
Said Nick? Okay. Any other questions for members of the commission or the applicant? Commissioner Santaco?
So Steve, on the 5-lot plan,
Yes.
so you go back to the upper part of that with your lots and on the,
Yeah, this road is 750 feet long.
Right.
So it's much longer cul-de-sac. We're pushing the houses, basically as far back as I think the Wetland Commission would.
I guess that's where I was going. Like, are you even going to be able to go back there? But I guess that's the deal you're going to get with wetlands, right?
Yeah, so we go before wetlands all the time. We have a pretty good understanding of what they will accept and what they won't.
Yeah.
And what we did is we try to keep structures outside of the upland review areas, and that's what we're doing with this development. They will allow some tree clearing and some yards and stuff in the upland review areas, but generally they want the structures out. So I think this would be our starting point. They may want some less tree clearing around the vernal pool area. Things like that. So I think for them, that upland area around the vernal pool is probably the thing that they would be mostly concerned with. But like I said, I wouldn't come here and show you a commercial subdivision that I didn't think the wetlands would
fair.
would okay. I don't want to, not my style.
Yeah, no, I hear you. In regards just to land preservation, just in general, wouldn't land preservation happen with a 2-acre lot versus a 1-acre lot?
Well, you may think so, but if you think about a building lot, is someone buys a building lot and they have the right to do whatever they want with that 2 acres. They can clear it from property line to property line. And a lot of times on a 2-acre parcel, you kind of lose track of what's happening on that parcel. And I don't know if staff wants to comment on that at all, but it's harder to see what's going on, and I think you'll see more encroachments into upland review areas and things like that. I think when we shrink it down into a smaller, more manageable piece of property, to be honest with you, the neighbors turn into our kind of police officers and keep track and make sure that things are being done the way they're supposed to be. And we also, another reason for the conservation easements around the property was to provide an area that's deeded, that will stay conservation treed and wooded around the parcel.
And that's the one, if you go back to this one, that's the thing to the top of the page you're talking about, right?
To the top, and then we did 15 feet on the sides as well.
So that's not counted as open space, though.
That's not open space. That's just preservation. That's
So
preservation
that's
here.
preservation land.
Yep, and that would be part of the deeds for each of these properties.
Okay, so that's preservation land. The open space part of it is that walking trail at the bottom.
Yep.
Right? And you got 200 feet less roadway.
Right, and if we go back to this subdivision is not required to have any open space or any.
No, you could build that tomorrow. We got
Right.
nothing to say about it.
So that's why we think, even though the open space is homeowner association owned,
Right.
we think it provides a nice entrance to the property. The conservation easement was an area for, we can maintain our areas on our lots, but we can protect the woodland and the trees and let them grow natural around the perimeters of the property. And hopefully the abutting property owners will appreciate that as well.
All right.
And that would prevent anyone from typically your regulation allows you to build a shed within 10 feet of a property line. We're proposing 15 feet, so at least an additional 5 feet away from the property line for any improvements that a homeowner might want to do there.
Okay. Thank you.
You all set, Peter?
Yes, sir.
Any other questions for members of the commission? Commissioner Volpe?
Not a question so much as just a comment, but preservation is my trigger word, so I really do like this. I also like that this component just for this specific area. We talked about it last time. This is a historic agricultural area of our town. There's a 1772 house on Flanders right down the street. So I actually think that small section is preserving the memory of what the land use in that area was. And so I really compliment you on including that. And that's all I have. I think it's great. Thank you.
I'm going to keep using that word preservation. Then.
Just with me. Yeah, especially with me. Thank you.
Any other questions of the applicant for members of the commission? Okay, seeing none. Steve, anything to add before?
Just if you want us, if there's any other thoughts, we're open, to consideration. We'll again be back in 2 weeks to talk to you. If we have a wetland approval, we'll ask you to close the hearing. Otherwise, we'll keep plugging along.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
All right.
Yeah. At this time, we'll open it up to members of the public. Anyone in the public who'd like to speak in favor of this application, please step forward now. Give us your name and address and share your thoughts. All right. We see no movement. So is there any member of the public who'd like to speak in opposition to this application? Again, please step forward, give us your name and address, and share your thoughts. Seeing none. I will note that first of all, the public hearing is going to remain open. There's wetlands action that we're pending, and as well there's comments from both our planning and engineering departments that we're looking for your response back from. Yep. Anyone who spoke at the last meeting, my count has 4 members of the public who did step up and speak to us. That is part of the record, so we'll consider those comments as well as part of our deliberation. So with that, Steve, before we move on, any other thoughts?
That's it. Thank you. It's nice to see everybody.
Good to see you too, sir.
Have a great night. Thank you.
All right, thanks. All right, let's buckle our seatbelts now.
Go.
Let's go to the business meeting. We have the first 4 items, A, B, C, and D, which all are not ready for action. Can we take them up as one group and get a table on all 4? Could I do that? Could I look for a motion to table items 9A, B, C, and D?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that we table items A, B, C, and D.
Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Tedesco with a second. Any discussion? Again, these are waiting either in a public hearing right now or waiting for Wetlands Commission to weigh in, which is the case on item 9D as well, that we're waiting for Wetlands to come back to us. No other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 9E, release of a 7,000 subdivision bond, the ARC of Southington, 314 Summer Street, S1291. Jim, is this ready?
Ready for action, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Can we get a motion on this?
Mr. Chairman, make a motion that we approve release of S1291.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I second.
Commissioner Ma with a second. Good to see you. Good job. You're famous. Don't worry about it. Is there any discussion on this? Jim, I know there were some concerns that were brought to my attention by some of the neighbors out there. I assume that this is a clean project and there's not any runoff or any problems that are affecting abutting property owners.
Yes, we have not, I believe Mr. Lovely has solved any issues. This one pertains to street trees and lot pinning, so, and then the second one under item F would be for erosion control, so they're still building one of the units, but they're pretty close to completing the duplex that's in the rear.
Okay, and I think some of the concerns that I heard were more along the lines of erosion control, that some people felt like some of that was bleeding into their property and causing problems down
Yeah,
there.
there is a culvert under Prospect and because this subdivision encompasses a number of lots, but we believe that that's been resolved. It was a construction related issue.
Yeah, I trust that you guys are keeping an eye on
Yeah.
it. So, okay, any further discussion on this? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 9F, release of a $3,400 E&S bond, the ARC of Southington, 314 Summer Street, S1291. Do we have a motion?
make a motion that we approve the release of S1291.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Oh, second.
Commissioner Ma with a second. Any discussion on this, Jim? This is ready as well? Yeah?
Correct.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 10, administrative items, any subcommittee reports? We heard from Commissioner Volpe earlier. Any other subcommittees?
No, we're getting a,
Commissioner Clock. Yes.
Have an update.
Yes.
I'm very excited. First, people know that I and others worked on the